Then there's one more thing I wanted to discuss, and that is Arnold stand-ins over here. These didn't really come up in the previous lessons, but they're very important when you start to manage much bigger scenes than the scene that we just did. So imagine you have a forest scene and there's literally tens of thousands of heavy or of really dense geometry scattered around. So one way to manage something like this would be through Arnold stand-ins. So let's have a look at this. We've got our shaded object over here. The shading isn't quite perfect, but it doesn't really matter right now. So, our little mushroom. Perfect. Over here we can go to the Arnold stand-ins and then export this as a stand-in. I've already did this once, but I'll go through it again. So the stand-in format is the S format. So this is the Arnold scene source format. Everything you render in Arnold, in Maya or in Houdini or in Max or in Cinema 4D, will get translated to the Arnold scene source format, because this is what Arnold can read. All the Maya implementations are just translations to the S format. So the Arnold scene source format is a very human readable scene source format. You can actually open it up and look at the different components, etc., etc. I would advise you to have a look at it because it's good to be familiar with it, although for this tutorial it's a little too advanced, I think. So let's go through the options. We can use a compression. So for example, over here then the file gets compressed. This is pretty useful. Export the binding box. Let's all leave these checked, right? Nearly all the time. Then we can use binary encoding to encode, for example, geometry coordinates, etc. So usually the only really important option is, do we need a sequence or not? And do we use a compression or not? So we're not using a sequence, so we can just go ahead and export the selection. There we go. It exported it. And then to load it back in, we create an Arnold stand-in. Let's hide this. And here we go. Our little box. Little binding box. If we load this in, you can see that it reads the binding box coordinates. And one of the really powerful things of the Arnold stand-in is that we can display the stand-in with different modes. So for example, we can shade it as a point cloud or as the normal representation, the shaded representation, just as a wireframe or as a binding box. A binding box, I'll leave that over here for now, because this will allow us to not actually have to load in the geometry at all in the scene. We can just load in the two binding box coordinates, so the min and the max coordinates, and this is all we need to represent our geometry. And what this will allow us to really create a lot of these and still keep it interactive and keep Maya pleasant to work with. We could probably instance, depending on your machine, of course, but like it's exponentially more than if you would use the duplicate special as an instance, for example, because then you would still have to shade the geometry. So let's have a render. Let's render this. There we go. Immediately you can see that is exactly the same asset. It works beautifully. So now we can start duplicating this. It doesn't actually matter whether you duplicate it as an instance or just duplicate it. I did some tests with it and there's no difference in terms of memory usage. So let's duplicate these. There we go. the same. And let's just keep going. Perfect. Let's duplicate these. Let's do that again and again. So the only thing holding us back over here is the speed that Maya duplicates these nodes at. We've got about 1,000 right now. Come on. There we go. Okay, let's try with this. So this would be way too much geometry to render if it was an instance or if it wasn't exported as an S file. And let's have a look. Perfect. So we can still move around pretty easily. It renders really fast. There's absolutely nothing slowing us down over here. Really cool.